The alarm screamed through the mining station like a wounded animal. Taman looked up from his microscope, his tired eyes adjusting to the flashing red lights that flooded his small laboratory. Another emergency. He sighed and saved his work on the bacterial samples he had been studying for the past 6 hours. Outside, miners were running toward the eastern airlock. Taman followed them, his boots clanging against the metal floors. The station administrator, Kyung, was already there, his face pale as he stared at the view screen. A cargo ship had crashed into the asteroid field nearby. Parts of it were scattered across the rocky surface like broken toys. "Anyone alive in there?" someone asked. "Scanners show one life sign," Kyung said. His voice was tight. "But it's not human." Taman pushed through the crowd to get a better look at the screen. The crashed ship had markings he recognized. Vraks. His heart began to beat faster. The Vraks were known throughout the galaxy as the most dangerous predators. They stood 8 feet tall, had 4 arms, and could tear through steel like paper. Their homeworld was a death trap of extreme gravity and creatures that would give nightmares to nightmares. "We need to send a team to check for salvage," one miner said. "Are you insane?" another replied. "If there's a Vraks in there, we stay far away. Let it die." Taman felt something twist in his stomach. He studied alien life. He had spent years learning how different species behaved, how they communicated, how they survived. The idea of leaving any creature to suffer made him feel sick. "I'll go," Taman said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at him. Kyung shook his head immediately. "Absolutely not." "Do you know what a Vraks can do?" "I've seen the reports. They're apex predators. They hunt for sport." They're also intelligent," Taman interrupted. "They have language, culture, technology. Whatever is in that wreckage is hurt and alone. I can at least see if there's anything I can do." Kyung looked at him like he had just volunteered to jump into a black hole. "Taman, I know you're good with aliens, but this is different. This isn't some peaceful trader or curious explorer. This is a Vraks. Then it needs help even more," Taman said, "because no one else will give it." 20 minutes later, Taman was walking across the asteroid's surface in his environmental suit. The crashed ship was worse up close. Metal was twisted and burned. Cargo containers were split open, spilling their contents into space. He found the life sign in what used to be a holding cell in the back of the ship. The Vraks was trapped under a collapsed support beam. Even injured and pinned down, it was the most terrifying thing Taman had ever seen. Its body was covered in ash-gray scales that seemed to absorb light. 4 arms, each thick with muscle, lay at odd angles. Crystalline bone protrusions jutted from its shoulders and spine, some of them broken and leaking a dark blue fluid. Its head was massive, with multiple eyes that tracked Taman's every movement. Taman froze. Every instinct screamed at him to run. The Vrax's teeth were visible through its damaged breathing mask, each one as long as Taman's finger. Its claws scraped weakly against the metal floor. "Hey there," Taman said softly, knowing the creature probably couldn't hear him through the suit helmet. "I'm going to try to help you." The Vrax went very still. All of its eyes focused on Taman with an intensity that made his skin crawl. He could see intelligence there, not the blank stare of an animal, but the calculating gaze of something that understood exactly what was happening. Taman moved slowly, carefully. He pulled out his portable scanner and checked the beam that had the Vrax pinned. It was heavy, but the asteroid's low gravity would help. He positioned himself and pushed. The beam shifted slightly. The Vrax made a sound, a deep rumbling that Taman felt in his chest even through his suit. "I know it hurts," Taman said. "Just a little more." He pushed again, harder this time. The beam moved. The Vrax pulled itself free with surprising speed, then collapsed a few feet away. Taman approached carefully, holding his medical kit. The creature was breathing hard, its chest heaving. Several of its arms were clearly broken. The crystalline protrusions were damaged, and that blue fluid was everywhere. Taman knelt beside it. The Vrax watched him but didn't move. He pulled out a sedative strong enough to drop an elephant. The needle looked tiny against the Vrax's thick hide, but he found a spot between scales and injected it. The creature's eyes began to dim, but they never left Taman's face. "Sleep now," Taman whispered. "I've got you." Getting the Vrax back to the station was the hardest thing Taman had ever done. He used a cargo sled and all of his strength. By the time he reached the airlock, every muscle in his body was screaming. The station crew was waiting, and they were not happy. "Have you lost your mind?" Kyung demanded as Taman dragged the unconscious Vrax through the airlock. "You can't bring that thing in here. It's dying, Taman said flatly. I'm taking it to my lab. The hell you are. That creature is dangerous. We need to what? Kill it? While it's helpless? Taman's voice was sharp now. I didn't sign up for that. Neither did you. Minji, the security chief, stepped forward. She was a tall woman with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. Her hand rested on her plasma rifle. If that thing wakes up and goes crazy, I'm putting it down, non-negotiable. Fair enough, Taman said. But let me try to save it first. He dragged the Vrax to his laboratory and sealed the door. The creature was massive on his examination table, taking up nearly all the space. Taman began his work immediately. He had studied Vrax biology in school, but theory was very different from practice. The creature had 3 hearts, multiple lung systems, and bones that were partially crystalline. Everything about it was designed to kill. But as Taman worked through the night, carefully setting broken bones and treating the infection spreading through the creature's system, he couldn't help but wonder about the being before him. Why had it been in a holding cell? Where had it been going? What was its story? The Vrax's chest rose and fell steadily under sedation. Taman placed his hand gently on the creature's shoulder, feeling the warmth of its body through his glove. I'll figure out how to help you, he promised quietly. Whatever it takes. Outside the lab, the rest of the station was already placing bets on how long Taman would survive. Inside, surrounded by monitors and medical equipment, Taman didn't care. He had made his choice. 3 days passed. Taman barely left the laboratory. He slept in a chair beside the examination table, waking every few hours to check on his patient. The Vrax remained sedated, but its vital signs were improving. The broken bones were healing faster than Taman expected. The crystalline structures were regenerating themselves, which was fascinating to watch under the scanner. Doyun, his research assistant, brought him food and fresh clothes. The young man stood as far from the Vrax as possible while still being inside the lab. You look terrible, Doyun said, setting down a tray of rice and vegetables. I feel terrible, Taman admitted. He rubbed his eyes and took a bite of food without really tasting it. But the patient is stable. The patient, Doyun repeated nervously. Taman, that's not a patient. That's a Vrax. They eat people. They eat meat, Taman corrected. And they're intelligent enough to know the difference between food and conversation partners. Doyun didn't look convinced, but he stayed long enough to help Taman change the bandages on the Vrax's damaged limbs. The creature's scales were warm to the touch and surprisingly smooth between the rough patches. Its claws retracted slightly when they handled its hands, an unconscious response even in sedation. On the 4th day, Hanbyul from medical came by with more supplies. She was a practical woman in her 40s who had seen everything the harsh mining life could throw at people. But even she looked nervous around the Vrax. I got you the antibiotics, she said, handing over a case of vials. But Taman, I have to ask, why are you doing this? This creature could kill you the second it wakes up. Taman was checking the IV lines he had managed to insert into the Vrax's arm. Maybe, but look at this. He pointed to the scanner screen. See these markers in its blood? This isn't just physical trauma. There's evidence of stress hormones, long-term malnutrition, and something else. I think this Vrax was a prisoner. Hanbyul leaned closer to the screen. A prisoner? You mean the Vrax arrest their own? I don't know enough about their culture, Taman said. But I sent a message to the Vrax Dominion through official channels. I told them we have one of their people here and that it needs medical attention. And, Hanbyul asked, and they told me to kill it. The silence in the lab was heavy. Hanbyul stared at the unconscious Vrax with new eyes. They want you to kill their own? They said it's an exile, a criminal, that it's been cast out and doesn't deserve assistance. Taman's jaw tightened. They actually seemed angry that I contacted them about it. That night, Taman reduced the sedation. He wanted to see if the Vrax could wake up naturally. He sat in his chair with a tablet in his lap, reading everything he could find about Vrax culture. Most of it was terrifying. They were warriors, hunters. They measured status by combat prowess. Their society was built on strength and dominance, but there had to be more to them than that. No species built starships and developed translation technology just by being good at fighting. The Vrax's breathing changed. Taman looked up and saw its eyes beginning to open. All 6 of them arranged in 2 rows across its massive skull. They were a deep purple color like dark crystals. They focused on Taman with frightening speed. Taman set down his tablet slowly. "Hey there," he said softly. "You're safe. You're in a medical facility. I've been treating your injuries." The Vrax didn't move. It just watched him. Taman could see its muscles tensing, preparing for action. Then it spoke. The sound was deep and harsh like grinding stones, but Taman's tablet picked it up and translated it. "Why?" The word appeared on Taman's screen. He looked at the Vrax and realized it must have a translation implant. "Most spacefaring species did. Why did I help you?" Taman asked. "Because you needed help. You were hurt and trapped. I am Vrax." The creature's voice was flat, stating a fact. "You should fear me." "I do fear you," Taman admitted honestly. "But that doesn't mean I should leave you to die." The Vrax was silent for a long moment. Then it tried to sit up. Immediately it made a sound of pain and collapsed back down. Taman moved forward without thinking, checking the bandages. "Don't move too much. 3 of your arms are broken, and your ribs are still healing. The crystalline structures on your back are regenerating, but they're fragile." The Vrax watched him work. Its eyes followed every movement of Taman's hands. "You know Vrax anatomy." "I studied it," Taman said. "But studying and practicing are very different. I've been learning as I go." "You are a doctor?" "A xenobiologist. I study alien life. You're my first Vrax patient, though." Taman managed a small smile. "What should I call you?" The Vrax was quiet again. "My name was taken. I am Exile." "Everyone deserves a name," Taman said. "Your scales are gray like ash." "Can I call you Ash?" The creature's eyes widened slightly, showing surprise. "You would name me?" "If you don't mind." Ash made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret. It might have been a laugh or a cough. Humans are strange. Over the next few days, Ash grew stronger. Taman reduced the sedation further until Ash was fully conscious most of the time. They talked. Or rather, Taman talked and Ash listened, occasionally responding with brief comments. Taman learned that Ash had refused to participate in a ritual hunt. The Vrax Dominion required all adults to prove themselves by hunting sentient prey. Ash had refused, calling it murder. For this, Ash had been declared defective and exiled. The ship had been transporting Ash to a prison world when it crashed. "So you're not a criminal," Taman said. "You just have a conscience." "Conscience," Ash repeated slowly. "The Vrax do not have this word. It means knowing right from wrong. Choosing to do the right thing even when it's hard." Ash's eyes focused on him. "You have conscience. You saved enemy. You're not my enemy. All are prey to Vrax. That is our nature." Taman set down the medical scanner he was using. "But you chose differently. You refused to hunt. That means nature isn't everything. Choice matters." Minji visited the lab that evening. She stood in the doorway with her rifle, watching Ash carefully. The Vrax stared back at her with equal intensity. "It's been a week," Minji said to Taman. "The Dominion sent another message. They're sending a ship to collect him," Taman corrected quietly. "And when?" 3 days. Taman looked at Ash. The Vrax's expression was unreadable, but Taman had learned to recognize the small signs. The slight tension in the shoulders. The way the claws extended just a fraction. Ash was afraid. "I'm not letting them take you," Taman said to Ash. "Not if you don't want to go." "You cannot stop Vrax ship," Ash said. "You are one small human." "Maybe," Taman agreed. "But I'm a stubborn small human." For the first time, Ash's mouth opened in what might have been a smile. It was a terrifying sight, full of sharp teeth. But Taman smiled back anyway. That night, as Taman dozed in his chair, he felt something move near him. He opened his eyes to see Ash had shifted on the table. One of the creature's massive hands was resting on the floor beside Taman's chair. Not threatening, just there. Taman reached out slowly and placed his own hand on Ash's palm. The scales were warm. The claws stayed retracted. They stayed like that until morning came. The station was nervous. Everyone knew the Vrax ship was coming. Miners whispered in the cafeteria. Security doubled their patrols. Kyung called 3 emergency meetings in 2 days. And at the center of it all was Taman's laboratory, where a human and a Vrax spent their time talking about philosophy and biology. Ash was walking now. The broken arms had healed enough to bear weight, and the creature moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. When Taman first opened the lab door to let Ash into the corridor, every person in sight ran. Ash had stopped walking and looked at Taman with those purple eyes. They fear me, Ash said. Yes, Taman agreed. But fear can change, come on. You need exercise, and I need to show everyone you're not going to eat them. They walked through the station slowly. Taman led and Ash followed a step behind. People pressed themselves against walls to let them pass. Some held up phones to record. Others just stared with open mouths. Ash kept all four arms relaxed at his sides, claws retracted, moving with careful precision to avoid bumping into anything. They reached the observation deck, a small room with a large window looking out at the asteroid field and the stars beyond. Taman sat on one of the benches. Ash lowered himself to the floor, too large for the furniture. Tell me about your world, Taman said. Ash was quiet for a moment. Vraxis is harsh. High gravity, dangerous creatures. We evolved to survive by being strongest, being fastest, being most deadly. But you're more than that, Taman said. Am I? Ash's voice was uncertain. I am defective. I cannot hunt. I feel wrong when I think of causing pain. That's not defective. That's called empathy. Empathy, Ash repeated, testing the word. Other Vrax do not have this. Are you sure? Or do they just hide it because your culture says they should? Ash turned to look at him. You think like this because you are human. Humans are prey species. You evolved to cooperate, to feel for each other. Vrax evolved to kill. And yet here you are, Taman said, choosing not to. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. A few brave miners came to the observation deck, saw them, and quickly left. But one stayed. Doyen approached hesitantly, carrying his tablet. I've been researching, Doyen said to Taman, though his eyes kept darting to Ash. There are stories in old Vrax records. Tales about Vrax who refuse to hunt. They called them the Gentle Claws. Most people think they're myths. Ash's entire body went rigid. You know of Gentle Claws? Doyen nodded nervously. Only rumors. Stories say they were killed or exiled thousands of years ago. The Dominion calls them corrupted bloodlines. My ancestor, Ash said quietly. My mother told me stories. She said I had the defect in my blood, that I should hide it or die. Ash's claws extended slightly, then retracted. She was right. No, Taman said firmly. She was wrong. It's not a defect. It's evolution. Your species is changing, Ash. You're proof of that. Over the next day, something unexpected happened. Miners started coming to the observation deck when Ash was there. At first, they just watched from a distance. Then a few asked questions. Ash answered them with surprising patience. One miner asked about Vrax ships. Ash explained their technology. Another asked about Vraxis. Ash described the massive creatures that lived in the deep valleys of his homeworld. Predators so dangerous that even Vrax feared them. How do you fight them? The miner asked. We don't, Ash said. We respect them. We leave them alone. Only fools challenge what they cannot defeat. The miner laughed nervously. That's pretty wise. Wisdom is surviving, Ash said. Dominion forgets this. They think power is everything. But power without wisdom leads to extinction. Taman watched these interactions with amazement. Ash was teaching people that Vrax were more than monsters. And people were listening, but the peace couldn't last. On the second day, Minji came to find them. Her face was serious. The Vrax ship is here, she said. They're requesting permission to dock. Kyung had called another meeting. This time it was in the main conference room and everyone was there. Miners, engineers, medical staff, security. And in the middle of it all, Ash stood beside Taman, towering over everyone. The Vrax Dominion has demanded we hand over the exile, Kyung said. He looked tired. They say if we don't comply, they'll take it by force. Him, Taman corrected again. And I won't let them. It's not your choice, Kyung said. This is bigger than you. This is about the whole station's safety. Then let's vote, Minji said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. She stood up, her hand resting on her rifle out of habit. We're a mining cooperative. We vote on big decisions. This is a big decision. Kyung stared at her. You can't be serious. I am, Minji said. She looked at Ash, then at Taman. I've watched them for a week. I've seen how the Vrax acts around Taman. That's not a monster. That's a person. And we don't hand people over to be executed. The room erupted in arguments. Some miners agreed with Minji. Others said they should protect themselves first. One woman stood up and pointed at Ash. That thing could kill us all. Ash spoke then, his deep voice cutting through the noise. Yes, I could. Everyone went silent. I am Vrax, I am Apex Predator. I am designed to kill. Ash placed one massive hand on Taemin's shoulder, carefully, gently, but I choose not to. Because this human showed me I could choose. He gave me name. He gave me care. He gave me friend. The word hung in the air. Friend. Taemin felt something tight in his chest. He reached up and placed his hand over Ash's. The Vrax's scales were warm under his palm. Ash is under my protection, Taemin said. If the Dominion wants him, they'll have to go through me first. And me, Minji said. Me too, Doyen added quietly. Hanbyul stood up. I don't like this. I think we're all crazy. But I'm in. One by one, more people stood. Not everyone, but enough. Kyung looked around the room and rubbed his face with both hands. You're all insane, he said. But fine, we vote. All in favor of granting asylum to the Vrax called Ash, raise your hand. Hands went up. Taemin didn't count them, but he could see it was more than half. Motion passes, Kyung said. May the stars help us all. The Vrax ship docked an hour later. Its commander, a massive Vrax even larger than Ash, came aboard with 4 warriors. His name was Rek, and he looked at the humans the way someone might look at insects. Where is Exile? Vrek demanded. Here, Ash said, stepping forward. Taemin moved to stand beside him. Rek's eyes fixed on Taemin. You are human who saved Defective? I'm the human who saved Ash, Taemin said. And Ash is staying here, Rek laughed. It was a terrible sound. Human thinks it can defy Dominion? You are prey. You have no say. Then you'll have to take us both, Taemin said calmly. Because I'm not letting you take Ash alone. Something shifted in Frakes' expression. He looked at Ash, then at Taemin, then at the humans gathered behind them. Minji had her rifle ready. Other security guards had weapons trained on the Vrax warriors. It would be a bloodbath if fighting started and everyone knew it. This is abomination, Frek said. Apex Predator does not bond with prey. Apparently this one does, Taemin said. Frek stared at them for a long time. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed again, but this time it sounded different. Almost respectful. There is old law, Rex said. Very old. From before Dominion. It says if prey and predator bond, they must prove bond in trial. If they survive trial together, bond is recognized. What kind of trial? Minji demanded. Rex's smile showed every one of his teeth. Trial by survival. Vrax proving ground. 72 hours. Many die there. He looked directly at Taemin. If you truly bonded with Exile, you will survive together. If not, you will die together. Dominion will accept either result. Taemin felt Ash's hand tighten on his shoulder. He looked up at the Vrax, his friend, and saw fear in those purple eyes. But he also saw hope. We accept, Taemin said. Ash made a sound that might have been a protest, but Taemin squeezed the massive hand on his shoulder. Together? Taemin said quietly. Right? Ash's eyes closed for a moment, then opened. Together. The Vrax proving ground was on a moon orbiting the Dominion homeworld. Taemin stood at the transport bay door, looking down at the surface below. It was a nightmare landscape of jagged rocks, dense jungle, and creatures that made Earth's dinosaurs look friendly. This was where young Vrax came to prove they were hunters. Many didn't return. You don't have to do this, Ash said beside him. The Vrax had been quiet since they left the mining station. I can face trial alone. That's not how bonds work, Taemin said. He was wearing light armor that Hanbyul had scrounged up, and he carried a survival pack with food, water, and medical supplies. It felt painfully inadequate. Besides, you said it yourself, together. Doyen and Hanbyul were monitoring from the transport ship. They would track Taemin's vital signs and location, but they couldn't help. That was the rule. 72 hours. No outside assistance. Survive or die. Vrex stood at the entrance to the transport bay. Behind him, other Vrax warriors watched with interest. This was apparently a big deal. No one could remember the last time the trial by bonding had been invoked. Rules are simple, Vrex said. Survive 3 days. Reach extraction point on far side of proving ground. If both arrive alive, bond is proven. He looked at Taemin with something that might have been pity. Human will likely die in first hour. But you chose this. I did, Taemin agreed. The transport bay door opened fully. Hot, humid air rushed in, smelling of vegetation and something else. Something that made Taemin's instincts scream danger. Ash moved to stand in front of him, blocking him from the worst of the heat. "Stay close," Ash said. "Do exactly as I say. Proving ground will try to kill you in many ways." They jumped together. The moon's low gravity made the fall longer than Taman expected, but Ash caught him before he hit the ground too hard. They landed in thick jungle. The canopy above blocked most of the light, creating a twilight world of shadows and strange sounds. Something roared in the distance. It was answered by another roar and another. "They know we're here," Ash said quietly. "Proving ground creatures are smart. They hunt in packs." "What are we dealing with?" Taman asked, pulling out his scanner. "Razorbacks, six-legged hunters with armor plating and venom spines. Also stalker vines which will strangle you. And if we're unlucky, a territorial Krex. Those are worse." "Define worse." "Imagine apex predator that makes Vrax look small." Taman decided not to think about that. He checked his scanner and picked up multiple heat signatures moving through the jungle around them. "We've got company. At least 8 contacts surrounding us." Ash's claws extended. All 4 arms shifted into a defensive posture. "Stay behind me. Don't run no matter what you see." Running triggers chase instinct. The Razorbacks came from 3 directions at once. They were the size of bears, covered in bony plates with mouths full of needle teeth. Taman's heart hammered in his chest as he pressed his back against Ash. The Vrax moved with incredible speed, catching the first Razorback by the throat and throwing it into a tree with enough force to crack the trunk. Another Razorback lunged. Ash's second set of arms grabbed it and used its own momentum to slam it into the ground. But there were too many. One got past Ash's guard. Taman saw it coming and dove sideways, rolling through undergrowth. The Razorback's jaws snapped shut where his leg had been. Taman pulled out the emergency flare gun Hanbjol had given him and fired it point blank into the creature's face. It screamed and retreated. "Good," Ash called out, still fighting. "Smart." They fought their way out of the ambush. By the time the Razorbacks retreated, Taman was covered in scratches and Ash had several new wounds that leaked blue blood. They kept moving, putting distance between themselves and the attack site. Night fell fast on the proving ground. The temperature dropped sharply. Taman was shivering within an hour despite his armor. Ash noticed and pulled him close, wrapping 2 arms around him. The Vrax's body heat was intense. "Thank you," Taman said through chattering teeth. "You saved my life in medical bay," Ash said. "I save yours here." "That is bond." They found a cave to shelter in. Taman checked it carefully with his scanner before entering. No heat signatures. Ash stood guard at the entrance while Taman set up their small camp. He treated Ash's wounds with the medical supplies he had brought. The Vrax didn't complain, even when Taman had to dig out a venom spine that had lodged between scales. "Why do Vrax do this?" Taman asked as he worked. "Make your children fight for survival?" "To prove strength," Ash said. "To prove worth. Those who survive deserve to live. Those who don't..." Ash trailed off. "That's cruel. That is Vrax way." Ash was quiet for a moment. "But maybe way is wrong. Maybe that is why I am defective. Because I see cruelty where others see tradition." Taman finished bandaging the wound. "You're not defective, Ash. Your people are evolving. You're just ahead of the curve." They slept in shifts. When Taman woke for his watch, he found Ash staring out at the jungle with all 6 eyes open. "Can't sleep?" Taman asked. "Thinking," Ash said, "about what happens if we survive. Dominion will recognize bond, but they will not accept me. And you cannot live on Vraxis, so where do we go?" "Somewhere new," Taman said. "Together. We'll figure it out." The second day was harder. They had to cross a river filled with things that looked like crocodiles but moved like sharks. Ash carried Taman across on his back while the creatures circled and snapped at them. Then they climbed a cliff face because the ground route was blocked by stalker vines. Taman's arms were shaking by the time they reached the top. They were making good progress toward the extraction point when they heard it. A sound that made even Ash freeze. A deep rumbling roar that seemed to shake the ground. "Krex," Ash said. His voice was tight. "Run now!" They ran. Taman's lungs burned and his legs felt like rubber, but he ran. Behind them, trees were crashing down. The Krex was hunting them. Taman caught a glimpse of it once, a massive shape covered in armored scales with jaws that could swallow a transport whole. "I can't outrun it," Taman gasped. "I know," Ash said. The Vrax suddenly stopped and turned to face the pursuing Krex. "But I can slow it down. Keep running. Follow scanner to extraction point." "No," Taman said. No, we're not splitting up. You must live. You showed me what bond means. I will not waste your gift. The Krex burst through the trees. It was even more terrifying up close. Ash charged to meet it, all four arms spread wide, roaring a challenge that echoed through the jungle. Taemin's mind raced. He looked at his scanner. They were close to the extraction point. Very close, and there was a ravine between them and it. An idea formed, desperate and crazy. Ash, he shouted. Trust me. Lead it toward me. For a heartbeat, Ash hesitated. Then the Vrax ran, the Krex chasing behind. Taemin ran too, toward the ravine's edge. He could see it now. A deep chasm with sharp rocks at the bottom. He stopped right at the edge, turned, and waited. Ash came running out of the jungle with the Krex right behind. Taemin pulled out his flare gun and fired all remaining flares at the Krex's face. The creature roared and charged blindly. At the last second, Taemin threw himself sideways. Ash did the same. The Krex couldn't stop. It went over the edge, roaring all the way down. There was a massive crash. Then silence. Taemin lay on the ground, gasping for air. Ash crawled over to him. That was insane, Ash said. That was teamwork, Taemin corrected. He started laughing, half from relief and half from shock. Ash made that sound that might have been laughter too. They helped each other up and limped toward the extraction point. The third day was almost over. They could see the beacon marking the end of the trial. As they crossed into the extraction zone, transport ships appeared overhead. Frek and his warriors were waiting. The massive Vrax commander looked at them with an expression Taemin couldn't read. You survived, Frek said. It sounded like he couldn't quite believe it. We survived, Taemin agreed. He was leaning on Ash, too exhausted to stand properly. Ash was supporting him with one arm, the other three hanging tired at his sides. Vrek stepped forward. For a moment, Taemin thought the commander might attack. Instead, Vrek placed his hand on Ash's shoulder in what looked like a gesture of respect. Bond is proven, Vrek said formally. Exile is ended. You are Ash who survived with Prey Friend. Dominion recognizes this. Other Vrax warriors made sounds of acknowledgement. Taemin realized they were witnessing something historic. The first recognized bond between human and Virax. What happens now? Taemin asked. Vrek looked thoughtful. Now you change everything. The news spread across the galaxy faster than lightspeed travel. A human and a Vrax had completed the trial by bonding. They had survived the proving ground together. Videos of their final moments, transmitted by the monitoring systems, became the most watched content in known space. Everyone wanted to see the moment when an apex predator and a prey species worked together to defeat the Krex. Taemin woke up in a medical bay on the Vrax ship. Hanbiel was there, having been allowed aboard to check on him. She was putting fresh bandages on his arms while muttering about stubborn xenobiologists who didn't know when to quit. How long was I asleep? Taemin asked. 18 hours, Hanbiel said. Your body basically shut down from exhaustion. You had dehydration, 3 cracked ribs, and more bruises than I could count. She secured the bandage and looked at him seriously. But you lived. You actually survived the Vrax proving ground. Where's Ash? Arguing with Vrax elders in the conference chamber. Has been for 6 hours. Taemin sat up too fast and immediately regretted it. Everything hurt. But he had to see Ash. Hanbiel tried to stop him, but Taemin was already moving. He found the conference chamber by following the sound of raised voices. The door was guarded by 2 Vrax warriors, but they stepped aside when they saw him. Inside, Ash stood in the center of a circle of older Vrax. Vrek was there too, looking tired. The exile law is clear, one of the elders was saying. Bond proven means exile ended. But this human cannot live on Vraxis. The gravity alone would kill him in days. Then I will not return to Vraxis, Ash said firmly. You would abandon your homeworld for prey, another elder demanded. I would stay with my friend, Ash corrected. That is what bond means. Taemin stepped into the room. All eyes turned to him. He probably looked terrible, covered in bandages and limping, but he walked to Ash's side anyway. Sorry I'm late, Taemin said. Relief flooded Ash's expression. One hand reached out and rested on Taemin's shoulder, a gesture that had become familiar. Natural. You should be resting, Ash said. So should you. Taemin looked at the assembled elders. If you're discussing our future, I should be here. One of the elders, an ancient Vrax with white scales and only 3 arms, leaned forward. You are human who proved bond. I am Elder Ven. I have lived 400 years. Never have I seen what you and Ash accomplished. With respect, Elder, Taemin said, I think you have seen it. You just didn't recognize it. He gestured to Ash. Ash told me about the gentle claws, the Vraks who refused to hunt. You called them defective and killed them, but they weren't defective. They were the future. Future? Ben's eyes narrowed. Explain. Taman took a breath. His ribs ached, but he pushed through it. Every species evolves. Humans evolved intelligence and cooperation because we couldn't survive alone. We were prey, so we learned to work together. But evolution doesn't stop. The Vraks have spread across the galaxy. You don't need to hunt to survive anymore. Some of you are starting to develop empathy, conscience, the ability to choose peace. That's not a defect. That's your species adapting to a universe where cooperation works better than conquest. The elders were silent. Freck spoke up. Human makes valid point. Dominion has been losing ground to alliance species. Our aggression makes others fear and unite against us. Perhaps there is strength in different approach. You suggest we become weak like prey? Another elder snapped. No, Ash said. I suggest we become strong in new way. Prey and predator working together are stronger than either alone. Taman and I proved this. We survived proving ground not by being strongest but by being smartest. By trusting each other. Elder Ven was quiet for a long time. Then she made a decision. There are others like you, Ash. Young Vraks who feel as you do. They hide their nature, afraid of exile. Perhaps it is time to stop exiling future and start learning from it. Hope sparked in Ash's eyes. You would allow this? I would study it, Ven corrected. You and your human will be on experiment. Dominion will watch. If bond proves beneficial, perhaps we reconsider our ways. If not... She didn't finish the sentence. We'll make it work, Taman said. Kyung was extremely happy when Taman and Ash returned to the mining station. Not because he liked them, but because the station had suddenly become famous. Research institutions were offering contracts. Trade deals were being negotiated. Everyone wanted to visit the place where the historic bond had formed. You're a celebrity, Kyung said to Taman. Both of you. I've got 50 interview requests just from this morning. Reject them all, Taman said. We're not performing seals. But some things couldn't be avoided. The Galactic Council requested a formal meeting. Taman and Ash traveled to the council station, a massive structure that housed representatives from 200 species. They were nervous. This would determine whether their bond was seen as an isolated incident or the beginning of something bigger. The council chamber was huge. Representatives sat in tiered seats arranged in a circle. Taman and Ash stood in the center, feeling very small. The council speaker, a crystalline being from a species Taman didn't recognize, addressed them. You have done something unprecedented, the speaker said. A human and a Vraks, natural enemies by all biological indicators, have formed a bond recognized by both your peoples. The council wishes to understand how this occurred. Taman glanced at Ash, then stepped forward. It started because I saw someone who needed help. Not a Vraks or an apex predator. Just someone suffering. I chose to help because it was the right thing to do. And Ash chose to trust me because he was willing to believe there could be a different way. And now? The speaker asked. What do you plan to do with this bond? Ash spoke then. We plan to live. To learn from each other. To show others that prey and predator can coexist. That choice is stronger than instinct. A representative from a prey species stood up. She was small, rabbit-like. How can we trust this? The Vraks have terrorized prey species for generations. What's to stop this Vraks from reverting to nature? Nothing, Ash said honestly, except my choice. Every day I choose not to hunt. Every day I choose friendship over instinct. That is who I am. And I trust him, Taman added, with my life. We've proven that in the trial. The council debated for hours. Finally, they reached a decision. The speaker announced it formally. The council recognizes the bond between Taman of Earth and Ash of Vraxis. Furthermore, we are establishing a new program, the Interspecies Cooperation Initiative. Its purpose is to explore and encourage bonds between traditionally incompatible species. Taman and Ash will serve as the first ambassadors of this program. Taman felt Ash's hand tighten on his shoulder. They had done it. They had changed something fundamental about how the galaxy viewed predator and prey relationships. 6 months later, Taman and Ash had their own ship. It was small but comfortable, with modifications to accommodate both human and Vraks physiology. They traveled from world to world, speaking to groups, teaching about cooperation, and helping other unlikely pairs form bonds. Doyen and Hanbyul joined them eventually, unable to resist the chance to study this new field of interspecies relations. Minji visited sometimes between her security contracts, always with stories about how the mining station was doing. On one quiet evening, Taman found Ash on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. He sat beside the Vraks, their usual position now. Ash's arm came around him automatically, and Taman leaned into the warmth. "Do you ever regret it?" Taman asked. "Leaving your homeworld? Your people?" Ash was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes I miss Vraxis. The weight of home gravity, the smell of crystal forests. But no, I do not regret. You gave me something more valuable than home." "What's that?" "Choice, freedom, friend." Ash looked down at him with those purple eyes. "Before you, I was exile, defective, worthless. Now I am Ash, who survived with prey friend. I am teacher. I am ambassador. I am companion. You gave me purpose." "You gave me purpose too," Taman said. "I was just a lonely xenobiologist studying life from a distance. You taught me what it really means to connect with someone different from yourself." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars pass by. Somewhere out there, other unlikely bonds were forming. A prey species engineer working with a predator species pilot. A herbivore scientist partnering with a carnivore explorer. Seeds they had planted were growing. "What's next for us?" Ash asked. Taman smiled. "There's a colony on the edge of known space. They're having trouble with a territorial dispute between two species. They asked if we could help mediate. Sounds dangerous?" "Probably, but we work well together." Ash made that sound that might have been laughter. "Yes, we do." The ship jumped to faster than light speed, carrying them toward their next adventure. Behind them, they left a galaxy slowly learning that the old rules didn't have to apply, that predator and prey could choose a different path, that bonds formed by choice were stronger than any instinct. And it all started because one human saw an injured creature and chose compassion over fear. Because one Varax chose friendship over instinct. Because two beings from opposite sides of nature's design decided that together was better than apart. The galaxy was changing, one bond at a time. And at the center of it all was a human and an apex predator who had become companions, who had become friends, who had proven that the future could be different from the past.